My name is Howard Sandroff, and I'm a composer. And I've been working with electronic systems of one ilk or another for a very long time, probably since the 70s. My background is varied. I started in music as a child, playing the violin. Studied composition, did more conventional things. I've worked as a live sound recordist for film. I've worked as a recording engineer. I've worked as a technical consultant for musical instrument companies. I've driven a taxi cab. I've written software. I've soldered circuit boards. I've edited tape. I've done just about everything you can think of in audio or electronics. And I've been teaching off and on for all those years, actually more on than off. And I'm currently on the faculties of the University of Chicago Department of Music and Columbia College's Department of Audio Arts and Acoustics. I've been at those institutions, the University of Chicago, this is my 25th year. And Columbia, I've been there in one capacity or another for 35 years. In the earliest days of computer music, you had only one option, and that was working with mainframes. And of course, mainframe computers were expensive, and they were way outside the what an individual could own, so they were limited to institutions. And of course, here in the United States, the institutions that housed those kinds of computers that were available to artists were universities. And so people interested in computer music tended to take on positions at universities. My earliest days in computer music required that I be involved with doing summer seminars and visiting appearances here and there. In those days, I was, in the late 70s, I was on the faculty of Northeastern Illinois University. And I got a computer music program running called MPL that was written by Gary Nelson at the Oberlin Conservatory. And this is the days of punch cards. Most of your readers wouldn't know about punch cards, but you'd have to prepare your programming using cards that were about this big, and they had little holes in it, and then you would take the cards over to the computation center, and they would have a device that read it by channeling little puffs of air through the holes. And then we'd take a computer tape, and we'd send the computer tape off to Bell Labs in New Jersey, and then they would take the computations, and they would run it through the digital analog converter, and hopefully what you would get back would be an analog tape. But of course, if in card number 1 you forgot to turn the amplitude on, you'd get back a tape full of tape hiss. And that happened more than one time. And in those days, the turnaround time between the time you programmed and the time you heard it was about 3 months. Obviously, that improved as time. In the early 80s, I spent some time at MIT, where I did some seminars there. And in those days, we were working on a PDP 1134, which is a digital instrument, a Digital Electronics Corporation computer. And these were basically, for the day, high-speed computers for instrumentation. So they were scientific computers. They were able to do math processing very quickly. And of course, the languages associated with computer music, in those days it was Music 11 that I was working with, were essentially mathematical languages. Well, the attraction was that you could generate sounds and structures using a much greater level of complexity. And you would have more or less control over all aspects of it. There's a certain upside to that, and the downside, of course, was the availability of the machinery, because at the same time I was doing that at home, I was working with my analog synthesizers, and I was using microprocessors to control them. So I was trying to create the best of both worlds, the analog synthesizer and the microprocessor, because of course, one, I couldn't afford a mainframe computer. And 2, I was trying to get repeatable control. I mean, the one disadvantage to analog synthesizers were that you could rarely, if ever, duplicate what you had done the day before. You build a patch, you tweak it till you like what it sounds like, you create some tracks with it, you go home, you come back the next day, and it was virtually impossible to reproduce it. You'd make drawings, you'd make charts, you'd make settings, you'd put little pieces of masking tape on the dials, and still The circuitry, was sensitive to temperature, was sensitive to all of the environmental factors and the fluctuations in voltage, and it was difficult and sometimes impossible to reproduce what you wanted, especially if it was complex. With a digital computer, you could.